In the ancient times, Italy was home to many different tribes and peoples. Most famously, it came to be known as home of the Romans, who would go on to become masters of all the Mediterranean. But before that, Rome was just a small city-state in the region of Latium. Romans themselves belonged to a tribe called Latini or Latins. In this episode, we go back to a time before the foundation of Rome. Here, we talk about the origins of the Latins. The foundation of Rome is traditionally dated to 753 BCE. At the time, Italy consisted of several groups of peoples. The Etruscans inhabited central Italian regions and towards the north. They were presumably the oldest inhabitants, which developed from the pre-Indo-European culture of Italy. To the south, the new inhabitants were the Greek colonists, which by the late 8th century started settling the coastal areas, bringing their sophisticated civilization with them. Between Etruscans to the north and Hellene settlers and the Apygian tribes to the south, numerous Italian regions were inhabited by the Italic-speaking tribes. Among those were Oscans, Umbrians, Picentis, Falisci, and Latins. The Latins spoke Latin language, which was written on the Latin alphabet, the one that we still use today. It was based on the Greek alphabet, one of the many things that Latins and others borrowed from the Greeks upon coming in contact with the Hellenic culture. Latins originally inhabited Old Latium, a small central Italian region located between Tiber River to the north, Mount Cicero to the south, and central Apennine Mountains to the east. When it comes to the origins of Rome, we all know the legend of Romulus and Remus, which led to the foundation of the Eternal City. Rome would eventually become the chief Latin settlement and achieve unparalleled greatness, which is still a very important component of our civilization. However, Rome itself was not among the oldest Latin settlements. Towns like Laurentum, Lavinium, Tusculum, Alba Longa, and several others were all considered to significantly predate Rome. In fact, origins of the Latins go at least several centuries further into the dim past. Ancient writers, both Greek and Roman, recount stories of the early Latins, dating back to a time corresponding to as early as 13th century BCE. At that time, the earliest Latin ancestors in Italy were known as the Aborigines. Coming from Latin words ab meaning at and originis meaning origin, the name Aborigines literally meant the originals, referring to the original inhabitants of the land. According to some ancient Greek historians, such as Dionysius of Halicarnassus, the Aborigines themselves descended from Oenotrians, a very ancient Italian tribe originating from Pelasgians through King Lycaon, a primeval ruler in Arcadia. Either way, the tribe of Sicily was said to have preceded the Aborigines in Old Latium, who were said to have originally been further inland. A mountainous area around Reate was said to be the initial home of the Aborigines, before they were pushed out by the neighboring Sabinis. These Aborigines then settled in what would later become Latium, pushing out most of the Sicily. Sicily in turn moved southwards, eventually becoming eponym for the island of Sicily. Those who stayed joined the Aborigines. By the time of the Trojan War, the tribe was led by King Latinus. It was during this period that, according to the legend, the Trojan refugees under Prince Aeneas arrived to the area, where they were welcomed and accepted by King Latinus. Aeneas then married Latinus's daughter Lavinia and founded the city of Lavinium. Upon Latinus's death, the tribe became known as Latini or Latins. Aeneas's and Lavinia's son Ascanius or Iulus succeeded as the ruler of the Latins. He founded the city of Alba Longa, from where his successors ruled over Old Latium for many generations. that is, until Ascanus's descendants Romulus and Remus founded the city of Rome. When it comes to the historical background of the Latins, as we have already mentioned, they belonged to Italic-speaking peoples, a part of the Indo-European linguistic family. Etymology of their name beyond the mythological King Latinus is rather difficult to establish. According to Roman poet Vergilius or Virgil, word Latium comes from lateo, which in Latin means to hide or to be hidden. Yet again, the Romans give us a mythological explanation, in which god Saturnus, equivalent to Greek Titan Kronos, the god of time, runs away from Jupiter or Zeus. He thus hides in this region, giving it the name Latium, or the hidden place. Another interpretation is offered by the modern scholars and is based on the region's location. Here, Latin word latus, which means wide, broad, or spread out, could be the origins of the region's name. After all, the area of Latium does consist of plains which are situated between mountains, a river, and sea, which does give some credibility to such hypothesis, where Latium could have referred to the area of the plains. Another possibility could be that the etymology of Latium and Latins originates from a non-Indo-European language. This would presumably bring us to a pre-Indo-European population that preceded the Italic speakers in Italy, and whose vocabulary, such as toponyms, would have been hypothetically adopted by the ancestors of the Latins in prehistoric times. Neither one of these theories and interpretations, however, could be definitely proven. Archaeological evidence of the Bronze Age Italy also does very little to help us have a clear picture. It is difficult to determine when exactly the Indo-European pro-Italic speakers would have arisen in Italy. The Apennine culture of the mid to late Bronze Age, as well as the succeeding Proto-Villanovan culture, spanning from 12 to 900 BCE, make no significant cultural distinction between presumably different groups of central Italy. Burial sites of the Proto-Villanovan period show practice of cremation in a double cone-shaped funerary urns. These were usually decorated with geometric designs and then buried. There does not appear to be significant regional difference in this practice across Italy. The only differentiation between the graves were the jewelry, armor, and other items that separated the graves of the tribal leaders from those of the lower classes. This indicates that the Proto-Italic speakers, although perhaps speaking a different language to some of their neighbors, especially those in Etruria, still practiced the same material culture as the other peoples of the peninsula. By 900 BCE, Proto-Villanovan culture shows several regional variations. One of those, the Latial culture corresponding to the area of Old Latium, marks emergence of Proto-Latins as a distinct Italic group in central Italy. Their burial urns evolve into hut-shaped urns, resembling the huts where the tribal Latins of the time lived. Their settlements were small villages, which gradually developed further over the next few centuries. By 700 BCE, a couple dozen Latin towns were already developed in Latium, amongst which were Laurentum, Lavinium, Aricia, Tusculum, Labicum, and Roma, or Rome. Interestingly, the settlement of Alba Longa, the chief Latin town of Roman mythology, does not appear to survive as a significant center into the historical times. It is believed that Alba Longa was rather a collection of villages across the Alban hills, which by this time gave way to other Latin settlements built on more favorable terrain. Whatever the case may be, Latins had fully entered the historical picture by this time. They made commercial and cultural contacts with the Hellenic settlers of Magna Graecia. They used Greek alphabet to develop their own and adopted much of Hellenic religion and mythology. The Latin city-states were organized into Latin League, a common defensive alliance supposed to protect them from foreign threats. At first, this would have been directed at the neighboring Etruscans who held hegemony over central Italy and beyond. Eventually, the Latin League would come to oppose a new adversary, a Latin city itself, the city of Rome.